Hey there, and welcome to Open Class number 14. Real excited having you here. Before we start answering some questions from the community, quick update on our program. So, the whole idea with the sleep coach school actually came after me and Coach Michael started talking about how there wasn't any like certification for sleep coaches out there. At least none for that was specifically for sleep coaching towards insomnia and trouble sleeping. And so we started creating like a course for that, and then we realized that perhaps there wasn't as much interest for that as we thought. And also we'd like to help not only train coaches, but people who actually have trouble sleeping as well. So that all of this is actually becoming something completely new, and it's becoming like a membership program instead. So I just want to share that it is almost done, and I think it'll be really good if you have trouble sleeping, you want to learn NADO, you want to learn all the concepts, philosophy, the philosophy, the models, etc. It's gonna all be there. If somebody wants to become a coach, the cool thing is you're gonna start off at doing the same in the same program as those who have trouble sleeping themselves, who want to become self-coaches, and you can actually learn coaching by interacting with me and Coach Michael, and you're going to get a hands-on experience that you can't get otherwise. So anyway, very very excited about that, and more to come, but it'll be done soon. So with that said, let's jump in and look at some questions. We have, I believe, 5 questions that come in, 3 via email, 2 via Instagram. So let's take a look. The first question is actually from Alina, who has contributed something super, many things, but something that I thought was particularly helpful, which was where she sent an email many months ago where she talked about how she, when her brain said, "Oh, I think you might sleep better on the right side of the bed," then she would purposely sleep on the left side, not to get the brain kind of entangled. When you have trouble sleeping, the brain is like constantly trying to find like loose ends, connect them, and figure things out, which actually makes you more entangled. You become more confused. So that unentangling method from Alina, super helpful. That actually one of my clients did really well with that one. But anyway, let's read this. This is an update from Alina and a question. Alina wrote the following: I just wanted to share with you the progress of sleep that's been going on for the past month. I've been sleeping so well in the past 4 months, and a big thank you for all your support back then. It was priceless. Anytime. I want to thank you for all your contributions, Alina. Last 4 months, my sleep was exceptional. I could fall asleep anytime, anywhere, no matter what, every single day. I can remember you were always saying that collecting a good experience, one victory after another, so important for confidence. Totally true. My confidence in sleep was growing every time I successfully slept. For example, we went on holiday at the sea. I slept with no problems there every night. Where I remember that some of the night I started feeling a little bit conscious about falling asleep, but I managed to get past that and I slept well anyway. I remember taking a nap at 6 p.m., still managing falling asleep at 11 p.m. later that night. I got to the point when my confidence was on such a level that I had no doubt that I can fall asleep under any circumstance, and it's been going great. It was just recently, 3 days ago, I found myself having increased anxiety about sleep, and it's been getting a bit out of hand. One night, it was generally a bad night. Also for my husband, he couldn't fall asleep as well. Something was in the air, I guess, but it triggered the old mechanism in me, and I kind of let it unroll. And I feel like I made it take a few steps backwards and currently sleeping much less and trying to get back on board. But with this setback, I noticed that the confidence that I have evidence in the past that I can sleep anytime, anywhere, doesn't calm me down as it did before. Like I unlearn everything I've been working on. It kind of gives me more anxiety. But on the other hand, also I see that if I manage to overcome this wave, this will be one more proof that I can beat insomnia anytime, even when in the worst fallbacks, thus getting more confidence. So my current challenge is not to get back in that usual sleep, but just stop feeling anxiety. I just feel like sharing this with you to get it out of my head, and I would really appreciate hearing your thoughts on it. Thanks again for all the help you provide, and looking forward to hearing from you. Absolutely. Thank you, Ali. And one more thing here. She sent the second email. Hey, Daniel, one more thought to my initial email. Do you think that it's possible that not following sleep efforts can become an effort in itself? I've been trying to understand what I might do that keeps the anxiety persisting. I'm fully aware that I'm not doing any sleep effort, but what if spotting and avoiding sleep effort is actually a sleep effort? like you're sticking to the old working plan and expect the same results, but instead this adds up to the anxiety. Sorry for a lot of messages. Thank you. Take care. Very, very insightful as usual here. And let us actually start here. Let's start with the last question from Alina, and then we'll go into more detail. So for those of you who are new to the channel, sleep efforts, super, super important concept. So what is a sleep effort? Well, a sleep effort is anything you do with the intent and purpose of producing or protecting sleep. It's a concept from CBTI. I don't know who came up with it, but it's common in the CBTI literature. And I don't know if this is super important, but I have divided them up into like offensive and defensive sleep efforts. And offensive ones when you do something like, I'm going to take this supplement so I can sleep. You try to produce sleep. And a kind of a defensive sleep effort is when you avoid something, like I'm going to avoid coffee so I can sleep. And particularly with those defensive ones, a problem becomes if you kind of avoid, then the insomnia takes over more and more and more power, more of your life. And it can be like your whole life can be kind of consumed by trying to avoid things so that you can sleep, protecting, preserving, etc. Now, Alina asked a very good question, which is, okay, can all this thinking about like, all this making sure that I don't do any sleep efforts, can that in itself become an effort? And it can. Anything can become an effort. Anything that you do or avoid with the purpose of that, like making you sleep or protecting your sleep, can become something that hurts you, because the fundamental truth is always like sleep comes to you if you don't try. So if you're always like, is this a sleep effort? Am I doing this a sleep effort? Is this not? I have to avoid that. Yeah, that can become an effort. But I don't think that's really what you should be thinking about the most. But yes, it is true. Anything that you do, again, with intent and purpose of producing or protecting sleep can become a sleep effort, including avoiding sleep efforts or watching out for them. Very true. Very, very true. But again, I don't think this is what, where you need to spend a lot of time thinking or pondering. I really don't think this is an issue. I think there's some other things that are much more important. So let us go through this email and pick out some of those, like those words that, like buzzwords that trigger my spidey senses as a sleep coach. And firstly, let's say, okay, here's one. Here's a big one. Victory here. Let's highlight that one. We highlight victory, confidence. It was growing, no problems. And then here, managed. I managed to get some sleep. Let's highlight this one. I remember taking a nap. I was still managing. Let's highlight this one. I got to the point where I had no problems, that I was doing great. Recently, I found myself having increased anxiety, generally bad night. I couldn't sleep at all, trigger mechanism. And here, I was trying to get back. Okay, that one is good. There were more ones that I felt I wanted to highlight. Okay, here we go, manage again. And you'll see in a second why I'm doing this. Okay, here, more proof that I can beat insomnia anytime. My current challenge is not good, but still feeling anxiety. I just felt sharing this. Okay, very good. So going back here, like Alina says here, that I say that it's good to always collect good experiences and one victory after another. I think here's the thing. I think it's always really, really good to find evidence that there's nothing wrong with you, that you can sleep, that there's that you're no different from any other person on the planet. Because when you think that there's something wrong with you, that you have a broken sleep switch, there's some neurotransmitter imbalance, like you have too much anxiety, or I don't know what it is, then you kind of get stuck. Because if you think you are yourself or the problem, like it's very hard to get out of that one. So whatever you can find that proves to you that there's nothing wrong with you, I think that's really good to highlight. But here's the thing. This can seem like splitting hair, but I think it is very important actually to be happy when things are going your way. Be happy when you sleep well. That's totally cool. But don't be victorious. Don't be victorious. And I think this is very important, because here's the thing. Sleep, insomnia comes from a place of fear. It comes from a place of, your brain which is always, your brain is a survival machine, it's always there to like keep you safe. Sometimes it gets confused and it thinks that that something is a threat that really isn't, like being awake. That's the problem with insomnia. Your brain has started thinking that being awake at night is a threat, a problem. It's coming to get me. It's like attacking me. I got to defend myself, right? And that creates this narrative that, fight or flight. You have to either defend yourself, fight off the wakefulness, or hide from it. You have to get away from it. You have to escape it or something like that. And it's this narrative that creates insomnia, because the more you try to escape a threat that is not a grizzly bear or a tiger, it's a perceived threat, which you cannot escape. You cannot hide from it. You cannot fight back. You can't do anything because it's not a real physical, tangible threat. And this is where your brain is confused when you have insomnia. Now, here's where this victory comes from. So when you sleep well and you think of it as a victory, you're like, I did it. I got this insomnia under control. Like, I'm doing this thing. It actually cements this narrative that there is a fight, that there is a struggle, that there is a conflict, that there is an enemy, that there is a foe, etc. So when you sleep well, be happy. It's like, I slept well, there's nothing wrong with me. But if you're victorious, then you know what happens? You keep telling your brain that you gotta sleep. It's good to sleep. It's bad not to sleep, right? Which keeps this narrative going. Or even when you're sleeping well for a good time, you still have that, that threat is still kind of like simmering back there. So it's much better to go in the direction of like, I slept good. Great, I'm super happy with that. But if I wouldn't sleep, that would also be okay. Go towards like non-attachment to the outcome, or natto, as I like to call it. That is the key. So when you sleep well, be happy, but don't be victorious. Super, super important. So and same thing here with the other things I highlighted, which is managing, and manage, and then finally beat insomnia. Beat insomnia, same thing there. We already talked about that. Manage is another buzzword. It's a buzzword for effort. When you are sleeping well, or rather this one, when you are not sleeping well and you look back upon the time where you slept well, it often comes across as, I was able to do something like before. I could sleep. I was able to sleep. I managed to sleep before. Now, why is it that you often naturally kind of start thinking these terms? Well, that has to do with control. When you're not sleeping well, it's like something is slipping out of your control, and then thinking that you had control in the past is actually kind of reassuring. It's like, I had control. I just got to get it back. I was able to sleep before. Therefore, I can become able to sleep again. I managed to sleep before. Therefore, I can manage to sleep again. I just have to figure out how. Very problematic, because sleep is passive, completely passive. So whenever you think that you had control at some point and you can regain control, slippery slope. Then you're going to have more trouble sleeping. When you think you managed in the past and you're now going to try to manage to get sleep again, slippery slope. So I think these are very, very important. So now, I think, to me, the big question is this one. Okay, let's say you have slept well for months. You slept really well for months. I had great sleep confidence, slept well for a month, and then you start having trouble sleeping again. Then you're like, what's wrong? Like, why hasn't all this good sleep built my sleep confidence to a point where I have no trouble sleeping whatsoever? Well, I think two things we have to talk about. Number one is that if a random person never had any trouble sleeping, has a night where they sleep very little for any reason, which happens to every human being, well, that person is just going to be like, yeah, I was kind of stressed out yesterday, and then don't think more about it, and then they sleep well the following night, right? But if you had insomnia and you have that night of little sleep for an obvious reason or for no particular reason, it kind of triggers the memories. It's kind of like PTSD. It's like, oh no, here it comes again. I'm going to have trouble sleeping again. So that's why, I want to say it is normal to have a little bit of a stronger reaction when you had insomnia. That's kind of number one. If you ever had insomnia and you are past it, you slept well, and then there's kind of a trigger and you think your reaction is kind of exaggerated, like, well, it's normal that it's exaggerated. So number one, don't think that it's strange that you may have less sleep for the same trigger that for another person doesn't cause so much trouble sleeping. But That's not what's most important. What's most important is this one. When you have slept well and you think you've slept well because of things you did, then you can build sleep confidence to a certain degree, but you're always a little bit vulnerable. When you've slept well and you attribute that to not trying at all, then you are in a much better place. Let me use this example that I've started using a little bit in clinic. Imagine a random person that is not willing to lose 5 minutes of sleep. That's completely unacceptable. This person wants to get exactly, or a minimum, let's say minimum 7.5 hours of sleep. Sleeping like 5 minutes less than that is unacceptable, completely unacceptable. That cannot happen. That just is not okay. This fictional person will have a ton of trouble sleeping because the pressure of maintaining a specific amount of sleep and nothing less is going to be so overwhelming that they can have a ton of insomnia. Now, on the flip side, a person who's like completely willing to have insomnia, they're like, I'm completely unattached. I'm not attached to the outcome. I'm natto. If I sleep a lot, sleep a little, both are fine to me. That person's going to sleep really well. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, here's the thing. The reason you slept so well over the past several months, Alina, was that you were like the second person. You were actually willing to have insomnia. You were not fighting it. You were not resisting it. You didn't think losing sleep was unacceptable. You were in a place where you were okay with being up. You were okay with being awake at night. You were okay with having insomnia. That's why you slept so well. And this is where attribution is so important. If you attribute sleep, good sleep, to being okay with being awake, if you attribute good sleep to being willing to have insomnia, you are golden, because then, all these months of good sleep, you just say like, I was willing to have insomnia for all those 4 months. And now that I have trouble sleeping again, I'm still willing to have it. That will take you to a place where you sleep good forever, truly. And I think you're a great place to get there. And by the way, it's so true what you say, that now this kind of wave of insomnia comes 4 months later. And then now if you go to a place where you're like, okay, I'm not going to fight this thing. I'm going to be like, it's okay if I don't sleep much for an indefinite amount of time. I'm willing to have that because I know that was what made me sleep so well leading up to this. Then that wave will pass and you'll be in a fantastic position. So Alina, let me know what you thought about this, and check out some of the latest episodes, specifically I think one about the brain training analogy. I think that one became really good, and I think that will be helpful to you also. So let me know how things go, Alina, and thanks again for all the support. All right, let's jump ahead to Jeremie's email here. So let's read it. Hi, Daniel. First of all, thank you so much for your videos. They've been helping me out tremendously lately. Super happy that they have, and thank you for the email. Here's a little background info. I've been a shift worker for the past 15 years. I work 12-hour shifts that rotate from days to nights pretty much within the same week. So sleep has always been quite important. Almost 4 years ago, I decided to ask my doctor for sleeping pills to help me out. I did sleep, but the night before my first day shift was always very hard to get a good night's sleep. Okay. Also, since I suffer from migraines a couple of times a month, I figured if I got more sleep that I might reduce the amount of migraines. So my doc prescribed lorazepam. Well, within a few months, not only did I need it at night, but also during the day, as my anxiety just skyrocketed. I hit what they call interdose withdrawal. So instead of increasing my dose, I decided to stop taking them cold turkey. Biggest mistake of my life. The nightmare this created is unimaginable. I went days without sleep. My anxiety got intolerable and lost all my confidence. I thought I was going to lose everything. This lasted almost 2 years. My wife is pretty much the only reason I'm still around. She supported me through all this. I know you've said a few times that sleep medications cannot cause damage, and I could not disagree more with you. Simply Google benzodiazepine withdrawal syndrome, look at the Benzodiazepine Information Coalition website and the many different benzo support groups on Facebook, and you'll find thousands of people with long-lasting effects from those pills. Also, you should look at the Ashton Manual to properly wean yourself off benzos, written by Dr. Heather Ashton, as it cannot be done in a couple of weeks, but a month. Just research a little bit on the effects they have on GABA receptors to properly understand the destructive effects they may cause to certain people. I went through all the bad habits you mentioned. I protected my sleep. I set a threshold. I used alcohol, melatonin. I would avoid going out late at night. I still get the sleepless night about once or twice a month, but it is much better than before. Recently, I stumbled on your videos after a sleepless night, and they flipped a switch in my brain that finally made me understand what is happening with me. One comment that you made in one of your videos was to tell ourselves there is no threat. I repeated it a few times, and it's almost as if I felt totally calm. That night, I slept like I hadn't in years. It was unbelievable. That's amazing. Amazing hearing this. Now, my main question is, what do you suggest for rotating shift workers? We can't go to bed or wake up at the same time every day. What is the most crucial thing shift workers can do to optimize sleep? I would like to thank you in advance for your answers sincerely. Absolutely. I want to first say, yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question, Jeremie. And, somebody else had a very similar take on, benzodiazepines. And, I think it is very important to talk to your doctor about how to wean off if that's the plan for you. I think, it is very different though. Like you hear some people come off and they just I stopped taking it and they didn't react to it at all. And some people have a very prolonged, thing happening. So I think, I'll just leave it there and say that everyone out there, talk to your doctor. Now, going here towards shift work, I think it is tricky. I have a bunch of live questions here, which I'll get to in a second here. Now, okay, shift work. I think the tricky thing with shift work is the obvious one, that you have much less control than someone who doesn't do shift work. True. But that said, I think the same principle applies that applies to any other disruptor of sleep. Let's say somebody has arthritis, or somebody has obstructive sleep apnea, or somebody has trouble sleeping because of an ongoing stressor in their life or something like that. Here's what where I'm going at is this one, that there are circumstances that we cannot control. Shift work or health problems or pain or something like that. And in those things, that circumstance is going to disrupt your sleep. True. Nothing you can do about that. It's a fact. It is a fact. Now, how can you minimize the impact of that disruptor has on your sleep? Well, that is, by not making things worse. So for example, let's say somebody has a lot of pain and they wake up, here and there. Well, if that same person who wakes up because of pain starts after a while going well, there's something wrong with me. I can't sleep through the night. And that's actually because of the circumstance, but that person starts identifying insomnia as a problem. They start doing all those things you talked about, they start trying supplements, sleeping in, catching up sleep, experimenting, etc. Then now it becomes a double whammy. Now there's the sleep disruption from pain in this example, plus the change in relationship with wakefulness, the not being accepting at all towards being awake at night, etc., etc. Now we have both. Now you have the disruption from the circumstance, and you have insomnia. And I think really, I have nothing more, intelligent to say about shift work than that shift work is going to disrupt your sleep. But if you don't try to, if you're still applying everything I talk about here, if you apply when you're not sleepy, don't try to sleep. When you're awake, even if you quote unquote should be asleep, don't fight that. Try to do something enjoyable, something neutral. Befriend wakefulness, no matter how hard it is. If it's the night before your day shift starts, you have it's particularly difficult to sleep that night. That is the way it is for if you do shift work or not. Oftentimes, the night before something important, a lot of us have trouble sleeping, and that. So again, it is really, I think, really going towards acceptance is the key. We can learn a lot from what happened with those migraines, where there were migraines that were attributed to anxiety. Anxiety produced migraines, so therefore we want to decrease the anxiety. So therefore, it started medication for anxiety. But as we know, you can't actually, like, medications can't change your feelings. Only thoughts can do that. So when you try to bottle up the anxiety, it kind of like just comes back stronger. Then you have more anxiety, you have more headaches perhaps. And then, so again, going towards acceptance is always much more helpful when it comes to anything related to like sleep or anxiety. When you try to control it, it gets out of hand. So again, shift work is tricky, but when you apply the same philosophy of like not trying to control sleep, and you set up a schedule that works as good as it can, I think you get the least disruption that is possible. So I'll just leave it there, and let me know if there's any follow-up questions, Jeremie. And I'm so happy that you slept well when it kind of sank in that there is no threat, there is no enemy, there is no foe, there is no tiger, there's nothing actually coming at me. The only thing I'm really truly afraid of, the thing I'm trying to escape, is being awake. When that sinks in, that can be super, super helpful. All right, so let's take a look at some live questions here. This is from Swarp. After 2 months of insomnia, I slept for the first time yesterday without pill. Thanks to you. That is amazing. Like, check this out. Not caring about sleep is the key. I have to expand on this a little bit, which is, if there's one thing that I hear more than any other thing when I ask somebody how they got to a place of sleeping well, it's like, I just stopped caring. I don't care about my sleep anymore. I don't care. Which, when you have trouble sleeping, that can seem like, how am I supposed to do that? Well, I want to say it this one. It is actually not really that you sort of don't care. You still want to sleep. Everybody wants to sleep well, but you have become not attached. You have come to a place where if you sleep or if you don't sleep, both are fine. So it can seem like I don't care, but in reality, it's more like you're not unattached. If you sleep or don't, both are fine. And that is the key. That is the goal. That is the way. Super, super nice. I'm so happy. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this. Joseph says, I've been trying not to care about falling asleep, but deep down, I really do care. How to get to a place where that's exactly what I just talked about, Joseph. It is not that you don't care. It's that you become unattached, or not attached to the outcome, or, as Coach Michael says, indifferent. How can you get to a place where you are okay with being awake at night? I think it always starts with education. I think it always starts there. When there's mystery, when there's kind of like, you don't understand why you can't sleep. It's like, why is this happening to me? Is it this? Is it that? When that is totally gone, when you completely see that insomnia is psychological, it's the type of anxiety, I've become afraid of being awake, and we start like, okay, I'm going to teach my brain that there's nothing to be afraid of, then eventually the disentangling, becoming unattached comes easier. So I think always start with education, and then just keep learning on this channel, Joseph, and you'll get there. Swarp said, best thing to do is keep your mind busy with something that really keeps your mind off of things. Like for me, I just started playing Pokemon at night. I used to have a routine of drinking chamomile tea, taking a shower, keeping lights off and stuff that was making it worse due to performance anxiety. And one day I just said, YOLO, I'm not going to die from not getting sleep, and sleep restriction helps. And, I think what Swarp shares here is basically like what I call kind of the quantum leap, like where you go from like being worried about sleep to like, nah, I'm going to just enjoy Pokemon, or go whale watching, or learn how to play a trombone, or become really good at baking. That can work really well. When you start understanding, like Swarp did, that there is no real threat, you can take that quantum leap and start playing Pokemon, just enjoy it and just forget about it. That's kind of dismissing the whole insomnia thing. That can work really well. Joseph adds, I just go to bed, turn off the lights, and think about what I would do the next day. I fall asleep without knowing it. Kind of same thing there. You just go to bed and like think about something pleasant. You're kind of dismissing the whole insomnia thing. That works great for people. If insomnia is stickier, if the anxiety thoughts are stickier, then check out that brain train analogy that I posted the other day, whereby you kind of like listen to the brain so it doesn't have to nag you and warn you all the time. I think that is super, super important. Very well. Super happy to hear this, Warp. Klaus, happy you're sleeping well also, of course. And now let's move on here to a question from DI. Hi, Daniel. Just want to hear your thoughts on this matter I've been thinking over lately. So as my job is starting soon, and I will have to be getting up early on work days, as opposed to choosing my time, that it brings some new issues to the table. The thing is that I just can't relax and get rid of the sleep pressure if I have to get up early, and it keeps me awake the entire night. If I'm free to get up whatever time because I have no morning obligations, then I have much less pressure to sleep, as I have a backup that I know I can sleep at some point some other time if needed, and it's not an issue, and as a result I sleep fine. However, with having to get up at 6 and work in the morning, the backup is gone and the pressure to sleep skyrockets for me. I really am not sure how to change that outlook, and that's why I'm writing this email. I know I should be okay with not sleeping at all, but that's a bit unrealistic, as I know I have to sleep eventually. Do you know how I can create another backup way to view this sleeping schedule so I'm not as pressured? I've been thinking of adding afternoon sleeping time to rid the night of the pressure, but not sure even that would release the pressure of it. Interested to hear your thoughts. Thanks a lot. Anytime. P.S. I'm aware that I can function and do everything even if I don't sleep, but that doesn't negate the pressure to sleep fully. I completely understand this one. And I want to say, firstly, that the last part of this email I think is really, really important. When you get to a point where you're like, I can actually function fine on very little sleep, at least some pressure comes off. Because if somebody is in a position where they're like, I gotta get this amount of sleep or else I know I cannot function, then we have this like secondary attachment that I talked about the other week. And that secondary attachment produces pressure, you know. Now, this said, what you described, DI, is very common. Somebody who has had no obligations, has kind of felt less pressure, slept easier, now has to get up at 6. You know, I think, to be honest with you, that oftentimes when you have trouble sleeping, it seems like flexibility is your friend, but sometimes it isn't. You know, sometimes it actually helps having obligations during the day. It can seem like having no obligation has saved you. It can seem like, you know, I had trouble sleeping yesterday, but that's okay because I can sleep in. And then you're like, well, I'm doing fine now because I don't have obligations. But what if I had a job? I couldn't do this. Oftentimes, I think it's the other way around. Oftentimes, I think flexibility isn't your friend. Oftentimes, I think you don't sleep well at night and you compensate by sleeping in the day. Then you kind of reinforce the idea that you can sleep and then you keep compensating, etc. So, you know, I don't know more. There are much more details here that I don't know, DI, but I really think, at least generally speaking here, that flexibility often isn't your friend. And you may be surprised to find that when you have like, okay, you have to get up at this time and then you have to stay up during the day, you may find that things actually get better for you. But okay, how can you, you know, it sounds like you don't have a choice here, you know, which is often actually good, I think. You know, when you have a choice, you often, that having a choice often makes you go like, should I do this? Should I do that? What if this? What if that? Now you don't have a choice. I think that's often good. You have to get up at 6. But you know that you're going to feel pressure in the evening. So what can you do? One thing is like what Coach Michael always talks about, like stop checking the time at a certain point in the evening so you don't know what time it is. That often decreases pressure. Always good, I think. Now, the second part of this is actually, again, I refer to this brain train analogy all the time, but I think it's really helpful. I think when your brain starts warning you, okay, because your brain always wants to keep you safe, right? So it often sends you these warning thoughts, which is like, okay, you have to get up early in the morning. What if you can't fall asleep? What if you're up all night? What if you can't sleep during the day? What if this spirals out of control? What if you go crazy? What if you lose your job? What if this? What if this? What if that? It's very tempting to try to counter that by saying, well, that's not going to happen. That's unlikely to happen. I have evidence that that's going to happen. Sometimes that can work, but oftentimes the brain can interpret that as like, you're not listening. You're not listening to me. I got to shout this louder. I got to warn you even more. And then the anxiety thoughts become stronger. You sleep less, you have, etc. So I think when there is this pressure to sleep and these thoughts come, I think it's much better to like show the brain that you're listening, you know, do a daily thought download, pick a few minutes a day, write down all the thoughts that come at night, you know, get them on paper, show the brain you're listening so it doesn't feel a need to warn you all the time or go there in your mind. Like when you have this thought, like, I'm not going to sleep all night, then you just go like, okay, I'm going to imagine being up all night and all day and all night or something like that. Whatever your brain is trying to warn you about, visualize it so the brain doesn't feel that need to like keep warning you about it. I think that those are my most important thoughts. And again, please let us know how things go, you know, a couple of weeks or so into this new routine. And then, you know, sometimes you make these predictions about the future and you're very anxious about it, and they may not even come to fruition. So let us know how things go when you've started this, and then we can talk about how things are going and see if there are other things we need to, you know, add to, you know, the teaching that we talked about just now. So DI, curious to hear what's going to happen here. Keep us informed. Swerp adds here to his success story, or her, one thing that helped me with the pressure of work is that I realized that even if I don't sleep, I have worked multiple tens of days before, and it's just one of those days. And avoid micro sleep. I used to come home and crash in my couch for 5 to 10 minutes, and that worsened the issue. Good that you brought that up, Swerp, because I forgot to comment on that. I think, you know, when you have this micro sleep and you kind of fall asleep and then you wake up and then you're like, dang it, what happened? I'm not going to sleep. Like the amount, if you sleep a very short amount of time, I don't think it affects your sleep drive that much. You're kind of like your body's need for sleep, but it can affect the break in the sleep system, hyperarousal, because if you're like, oh my gosh, I slept and I shouldn't have slept and now I can't sleep, that can be a big problem. I think that if you come home not too late and you actually plan to take a nap, a short nap, just to kind of feel more refreshed and take the pressure off, I think that can help. But Swerp is right too. I see a lot of times when people come home from work and unintentionally fall asleep and then wake up and then they have trouble sleeping. But I think a little scheduled nap to take the pressure off may not be a bad idea, I think. All right, very cool. So let's move ahead here and look at our next question, which is from P-Gurl. It's actually I didn't post the exact handle for privacy reasons, but it was similar to that. And this is a question that came in from Instagram. Hi, how are you? I wanted to ask you that for a few months or so, I have been experiencing what you call hypnic jerks. Just as I get sleepy and sleep, just then it starts happening to me. I wake up, I sleep, it happens again. Then when I finally wake up, it goes away, and then I sleep after a while, although I feel calm. But now, since I Google what the sensation was, I'm more anxious. I'm scared. I hope it's not a disease like MS or epilepsy, God forbid. I do take stress. I have a lot of stress. That's like my habit. And since I read about hypnic jerks, I'm more anxious. Please help me. What is this? Please do reply. I said I would reply today because I'm thinking of canceling my holiday trip. So for anyone out there that has had, you're about to fall asleep and you jerk awake, or you're about to fall asleep and you suddenly realize you were about to fall asleep. Anyone who's concerned about your health, talk to your doctor. But generally speaking, those things are completely harmless. If you ask people or you observe other people fall asleep, very many people have a little jerk and then they drift off. Completely normal. Something to do with the changes in the brainstem. I remember a neurology friend told me, for whatever reason, completely normal part of falling asleep. But like so many other things, when you take note of them and you start becoming worried about them, then they become stronger because now you notice them and now you're hyper aroused, kind of like, and then you have them even stronger, and then they can be really, really bothersome. So I want to encourage everyone to check out there's a playlist on these events. It's in the description of any recent videos. So anyone has them, please check that out. And the key to these events is know that they're normal. The more you try to prevent them or figure out what they're happening, the more of them you get, because then you become more hyper aroused. And I think the most helpful tip I got from my good friend Martin Reed, who got is from one who posted this on his forum or something like that, which was look at it as a sign that you're about to fall asleep, which is so true. Both these jerks and the hypnic awareness is just a sign that you're about to fall asleep. And I was about to fall asleep, and just, then sleep comes back easily. So I hope that really helps. And that leads us to, I think this is the last email from Joe, who, this is Joe who, had sent a question that we talked about, I think Friday. This is Joe who slept much better at his grandparents' place. Let's read this. Hi, Dan. Watched your video yesterday. Very informative. Been working on stimulus control only. I slept much better last night. Woke up 3 times, but had 3 different dreams, and some health hopefully builds the momentum. Any tips for better sleep quality? Okay, that's the first question. Kind regards. Also, not sure how many hours to get that rested feeling, you know, wondering if that will come over time or if I need more sleep. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. is my schedule, but I wake up a few times in the night. Major improvement only a few days with hygiene, ACT, exercise, and stimulus control. Well, first of all, I'm super excited that you've had a major improvement. That's fantastic. That is fantastic. Super happy to read that. And you just always keep in mind, though, always keep in mind that when you do things like ACT, for example, which is, you know, acceptance, particularly that one, the reason you sleep better is always, like I pointed out with Alina in the beginning, always that you're trying less, that you're kind of not fighting to get sleep. In other words, you are more okay with having insomnia. You are more willing to have insomnia. You are more okay with being awake at night. And when you're okay with it and you're not fighting to not be awake, then sleep comes easily to you. Because again, insomnia really comes from a place of being afraid of being awake at night. And the more the more you kind of fight to not be awake, the more that backfires. So anyway, always when you sleep better, always attribute that to trying less, because then when you have trouble sleeping again, you're like, okay, now I have to try less again, and then sleep comes back to you instead of going to the rabbit hole of like chasing sleep again and trying to do things to make yourself sleep. So I want to start there, and then I want to say, any tips for better sleep quality? You know, when it comes to sleep quality, I think the best measure of sleep quality is how you feel during the day. You know, if you feel pretty refreshed, then you had a good sleep quality. Now, on the flip side, if you didn't feel refreshed, then sleep may or may not have something to do with it. I think, generally speaking, when someone does not feel refreshed and there is something pretty obvious going on with their sleep, maybe they have sleep apnea, they're snoring a lot, they're choking in sleep, or they have obvious insomnia, well, then there's something to work with. But if somebody is like, I sleep pretty okay and I just don't feel refreshed, then I'm almost always like, sleep is probably not the culprit. You know, look at other things that you may have not more control over, like exercise, or like, you know, am I doing things that are exciting? Like, am I enjoying my day? Things of that nature are really helpful. And the reason this is so important to me is that when there's nothing obvious going on with your sleep, and you still think that that's the reason you don't feel refreshed, then you're so tempted to go into like, okay, I'm going to optimize my sleep. I'm going to try this supplement. I'm going to try this thing. I'm going to try this other thing. And the more attention towards sleep, the less sleep you get, then you feel even worse. Then you try to optimize it even more. And then you get into the insomnia rabbit hole. So I think that's very important. Now, one more thing I want to say is this one. You slept better for a few days. And let's say, for argument's sake, that you slept better for a few days, and now you're actually feeling more tired than you did, or the same or more tired. Well, that could be what I call post-arousal fatigue. Imagine somebody who's playing this intense game of basketball. They're in the game, they're playing, they're trying to steal the ball, blah, 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 blah. And somebody asks them right there and then, like, are you feeling tired? They're like, no, heck, I'm not tired. I'm playing, like, I'm playing here. Same thing with insomnia. When you are in kind of active insomnia, your hyperarousal is going, like, you may not feel how truly tired you are because all that kind of adrenaline is masking it. Then you start sleeping better because that hyperarousal, the anxiety, if you will, kind of calms down. Well, guess what? Then the fatigue is unmasked. So for the same reason that you're sleeping better, you have less hyperarousal, you also feel the fatigue. That may be happening. If that is what's happening, it's just a matter of time. When you slept better for a longer period of time, then you will feel good again. Kristen is here. High five, Kristen. Hope you're doing really, really well. Okay, so with that said, I want to thank everyone that's contributed. I guess a special shout out here to Swarp. Thanks so much for sharing a success story here. That is, hope is that commodity you just can't get enough of. So I'm super glad for that one. With that said, yeah, I'll be back tomorrow with an Insomnia Insight, and Thursday we have Casper, who's going to talk to us about his mom who had sporadic fatal insomnia, and I think he can share things that will really, really make people less stressed about that one. Friday, I'm back answering questions, and again, our course is going to be up very soon, and that's going to be great for anyone that's trouble sleeping, who wants a little bit more support, accountability, etc. But also, BedTyme is here too. If you need a little bit more support, accountability, etc., if you just have a few minutes a day, it is a great one. You are very welcome. It's on both app stores and iCoach there. So again, thanks so much everyone for tuning in, and I will be back tomorrow. Until then, take it easy.